Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. If you've never read the book and the only thing you know about Frankenstein is the current cultural references to it, you probably think that Frankenstein looks something like this. Frankenstein is a massive, lumbering monster that makes occasional grunts and walks with his arms stretched out in front. Then there would also be in mind the scene of a mad scientist flipping a switch and screaming, "It's alive!" I wasn't quite that in the dark about this book when I went into it. I knew that Frankenstein was the doctor, not the monster, but I still had never read through the whole thing before, so this was an interesting exercise for me. One surprise in the book was how conscious and philosophical the Frankenstein's monster was. Because you have Victor Frankenstein and his monster having these philosophical conversations and arguments, and I thought he was more of the lumbering stereotype that we kind of picture. So didn't see that coming. I also didn't picture Frankenstein's monster being so versed in English so quickly. Like he just comes to life and suddenly English is right with him, along with several centuries of Western thinking. But I guess that's what happens when you reanimate a corpse. They just come right with that. I didn't quite get Frankenstein's monster's motivation as it went through the story. Like, he wants to be loved, but he's so hideous, no one will love him, and he takes it out on Victor Frankenstein for creating him in the first place. So it was a bit of a stretch for me. Also, it's interesting the way that this was written because you don't know anything about the physical details of Frankenstein's monster, like whether what his skin is like, or whether it's like rotting and falling off, or whether it's well kept together. Like this was written in 1818, and she did not include many details. It's kind of just left to your imagination, which wouldn't happen, I think, in a novel today. But I think all these objections that I'm bringing to about the logic of the story not completely adding up may be misplaced. If you were to read Little Red Riding Hood and you start pointing out that wolves can't talk, wolves can't swallow people, and if they do swallow people, it's very unlikely that you're going to be able to find Grandma again and revive her back to normal. You have to have an understanding of what it is that you're reading to really appreciate what it's going for. And in this case, Mary Shelley wrote this to explore certain themes. So here are some themes that jumped out to me. Ambition, going too far, violating the natural order of the universe, good versus evil, loneliness, and the need for companionship. In that respect, I thought it was a very good examination of these ideas, even though the story technically doesn't make much sense. Overall, the book has a very pro-religious stance. You have these roles of God that people shouldn't mess with. We see the consequence of people messing with that in the creation of this horrible monster. I also thought it was a good exploration of people needing people, and that being true even for this horrifying monster. And the fact that he is so pained by not being able to have companionship with anyone because he's so hideous just really brought that home to me. And I think she cleverly weaves in the monster sense of isolation with Dr. Frankenstein's isolation. So in the beginning I was kind of surprised by how slow it was and how it wasn't really what I was expecting to be reading. But overall it won me over with the way she was developing these themes. So I ended up really enjoying it, especially as it got towards the end. Honestly, when I chose to read this, I thought it would have more of that classic Halloween sort of feel to it. Last year I read Dracula for Halloween, and that was lined up perfectly with what I was hoping for. That's the spirit of Halloween right there. Frankenstein was very different. It was a lot more philosophical than I thought. But towards the end, you do get some really Halloween sort of vibes, especially when you have Frankenstein's monster following Victor Frankenstein through the towns, and Victor Frankenstein trying to track down his monster through the icy passages up north. And there's some other things I won't give away because I won't give away all the spoilers, even though it was written over 200 years ago. Still, the end of the book is not happy, and that's exactly fitting with the overall theme of the book anyway. If you live the life of Victor Frankenstein, it is not going to end well. And so I thought it was a sad ending, but it was a perfect ending to how this story should go. And it kind of leaves you with this dark sense of the abyss out there. I'm trying to think of another way to explain it. But I guess in a sense, it's like we as human beings have this narrow realm of acceptable good things, and everything outside of that is There's just this darkness that stretches on forever. So that's what the ending left me with a sense of, which I thought was pretty impressive. I think of this as a story of keeping your ambitions in check with a strong moral compass, and also an effective analysis of the dark side of human nature. I'm going to give this book 4.5 stars.